It's story time. Chapter 2. Mr. Smith.
This has really, truly happened. This is not, I know the girls that it happened to, and this is pretty good.
This is Sherry Passell. You might recognize her voice from Season 1, Episode 9, The Women in White. She shared a story about being visited by a mysterious woman one night who turned out to be the spirit of her daughter. Now, she brings us a story that happened to her college friend's family.
My college friend, she had a huge family, maybe 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, and her dad died when they were all pretty little. And so her mom had to support all these kids, and she had never worked before. She got a job, but they lived in this big old house, and it was just a mess, the house. Like, it needed so many repairs. But, little by little, she was trying to fix things. But anyway, it was a crazy big house. And I think that my friend was the oldest of the kids, but her little sister that was 2 years old had a pretend friend. and his name was Mr. Smith. They would say, "What does Mr. Smith look like?" "He's big and fat," she would tell them. "He's got a big red beard." And she would always say, "I need 2 cookies, one for me, one for Mr. Smith." Or, "Mr. Smith says I shouldn't have dinner with you guys tonight. I should have it upstairs with him." And they just thought it was adorable, and they would let her take her plate up. "Go ahead, you can have dinner with Mr. Smith tonight." Or they would give her the 2 cookies and say, "Don't forget, this one's for Mr. Smith, not for you." Anyway, it just went on until she was probably 4. And then they stopped hearing about Mr. Smith. Well, as her mom started getting promotions and doing better at work, they started to be able to repair the house. And they found a room they didn't even know existed. It was kind of like a big walk-in closet-sized room, but, they were knocking down walls, doing a little remodeling, and this room they never knew was there, they found. And inside, there were piles of prescription bottles to a Mr. Smith. And they look into it, and he had died in the house.
After this discovery, the family went to the library, and in their research, they learned that this Mr. Smith was an alcoholic during Prohibition. During this era, one of the few legal ways to obtain alcohol was with a prescription from your doctor. It was mostly a way for doctors to rake in some extra cash. But those who could afford multiple doctor's visits for their hooch did just that, and Mr. Smith took advantage of this privilege. They had also found photos of him, and he looked exactly like the little girl had described.
And the most interesting part of that story, I think, is that the little girl today, she's an adult, and she doesn't remember this at all. Not even a little bit. As children, we experience that, and then as we grow up, then we kind of throw that part of our brain away where we can imagine and let ourselves see something that's a little bit magical. A child that age, our brains are so mixed up with fantasy and reality, and then it switches over to mostly reality. So she just lost it. She lost that memory, and it also makes me think that we probably all have that. Like, there might be something that happened to you and I when we were 2 or 3 years old that we just don't remember.
I asked Sherry if anyone else in that house had reported experiencing any unexplainable activity.
They have lots of ghost stories about the house. Like, they said that the older children, they didn't put the 2 things together because they thought he was just a pretend friend. But they always said that they thought the house was haunted. And, when you have a creaky old house, that's common, and it was old. It was very old, this house. So they said that they would turn all the lights off when they went to bed at night and then come back down and all the lights were on. Radios would turn on by themselves, that typical stuff, that you see in movies, but they just called that the ghost. Like, things would get misplaced. Somebody would say, "I put my book right here," and they would find it up in the attic. They had lots of stories like that, and they connected them when they figured out that there really had been a Mr. Smith.
I love these types of ghost stories where they end in some sort of validation that what the person experiencing was rooted in fact. Mr. Smith really existed and lived in that house, or rather, still lives in that house. Really, all of our homes are inhabited by the memories of the people who lived here before us. And that goes for newly built homes, too. I remember when I was younger, my mom would always tell me to never move into a previously inhabited house because you don't know its history. But the land that we live on was previously inhabited. Spirits are present with us, no matter where we are.
They're always there. I think we don't have the words to talk about this, but it's kind of like the parallel universe thing. I think they're everywhere. I think that our human brains can't imagine it. We can't see it. But sometimes, like, there's part of our brain that allows us access to what's happening in the spirit world.